Foreclosures are surging 20% year over year. Banks are repossessing homes 33% faster than last year. And in some cities, 1 in every 470 homes is already in default. The recovery they promised? It's not coming. From insurance costs crushing families to jobs vanishing overnight, the foreclosure crisis is exploding. Today, we're exposing 10 cities where it's worst and why your equity is at risk. Coming in at number 10, Atlantic City, New Jersey. They called it the Las Vegas of the East Coast, a gambling paradise, a beachfront retirement destination. City officials promised economic revitalization with every new casino that opened. Developers marketed boardwalk condos as investment opportunities that couldn't lose. But today, Atlantic City is drowning in foreclosures, and most Americans have no idea how catastrophic it's become. In the first half of 2025, Atlantic City posted a foreclosure rate of 0.25%, ranking among the 10 worst metropolitan areas in the entire country. That means roughly 1 in every 2,032 housing units had a foreclosure filing. For a city with a population under 40,000, those numbers represent entire neighborhoods being gutted. The casinos that promised economic revival? 4 major ones have closed in the last decade: the Atlantic Club, Revel, Trump Plaza, and Trump Taj Mahal, eliminating thousands of jobs virtually overnight. The service workers, dealers, and hotel staff who built their lives around the gaming industry found themselves unemployed with mortgages they couldn't pay. Walk down Pacific Avenue today, and you'll see the evidence that data can't capture. Boarded-up storefronts that once housed thriving businesses, empty hotel lobbies where tourists used to line up, for sale signs rusting in overgrown yards that haven't seen maintenance in years. The median household income in Atlantic City sits at just $29,232. That's less than half the national average. And yet property taxes continue climbing year after year. The betrayal runs deep. Retirees who relocated here for the affordable beach lifestyle discovered that affordable meant hidden costs everywhere. HOA fees keep increasing. Special assessments hit without warning. And when the casino jobs disappeared, so did the property values that homeowners were counting on for their retirement equity. If you bought property in Atlantic City, thinking tourism would bounce back, thinking the casinos would rebound, think again. The economic engine that built this city is sputtering. The visitors who once packed the boardwalk are choosing other destinations, and homeowners who stretched their budgets to own a piece of this fading paradise are watching their equity evaporate as banks move in to collect. For families who tied their financial futures to Atlantic City real estate, the nightmare is just beginning. The foreclosure pipeline here is long, the recovery prospects are dim, and the exit options are shrinking by the month. But that's nothing compared to what's coming next. Stick around. The cities ahead are far worse, and one of them might be closer to you than you think. At number 9, we have Ocala, Florida. Ocala was supposed to be the answer, the affordable alternative to Florida's overheated coastal markets, a quiet escape for retirees fleeing Miami's congestion and Orlando's tourist crowds. Developers marketed it as horse country, rolling pastures, rural charm, modern amenities, and home prices that wouldn't drain your retirement savings. What they conveniently failed to mention was the foreclosure crisis brewing beneath those picturesque surface-level marketing materials. In the third quarter of 2025, Ocala ranked 5th worst in the entire nation among metropolitan areas, with at least 200,000 residents. 1 foreclosure filing for every 665 housing units. Let that number sink in. 1 out of every 665 homes in this supposed retirement paradise is currently in some stage of foreclosure proceedings. The underlying problem that crushed Ocala homeowners. Retirees on fixed incomes never saw the insurance avalanche coming. Florida's property insurance premiums have exploded to more than double the national average, and in many cases, far worse. Families throughout Marion County are now paying $5,000, $6,000, even $7,000 annually, just to insure modest single-family homes. When you're living on Social Security checks that barely cover groceries, that insurance bill becomes impossible. But the insurance crisis is just one piece of the collapse. Property taxes keep climbing. HOA fees keep increasing, medical costs keep rising, and the pension income or retirement savings that seemed sufficient when these retirees moved to Ocala, it's being stretched beyond the breaking point. Drive through Marion County today, and you'll witness the human toll that statistics can't convey. Foreclosure auction signs staked into front lawns of homes that were lovingly maintained just 2 years ago. Quiet cul-de-sacs where 3 or 4 houses sit vacant with yellowing grass and newspapers piling on porches. Real estate investors from out of state circling the county like vultures waiting to pick the bones clean. The local economy offers no lifeline. Ocala's job market is dominated by agriculture, retail, and healthcare, sectors that don't pay wages sufficient to rescue underwater homeowners. Young families who might buy these distressed properties can't afford them either, trapped by the same insurance costs that broke the previous owners. For anyone who moved their retirement savings, their life's work, their dreams of a peaceful Florida retirement to Ocala, the math no longer adds up. Home values are softening while carrying costs explode in every direction. And when you can't sell because there simply aren't buyers at prices that cover your mortgage, foreclosure stops being a possibility and becomes an inevitability. Isn't it strange how the same affordable markets that politicians and developers promote as solutions are consistently the ones where working families and retirees can't actually afford to stay? Now, at number 8, Houston, Texas. Houston was the American economic miracle, the energy capital of the world, the job creation engine that seemed to defy every national downturn and recession. Politicians from both parties pointed to Texas, and Houston specifically, as irrefutable proof that low taxes, minimal regulation, and business-friendly policies meant endless prosperity for everyone willing to work. But the foreclosure numbers expose a dramatically different reality that those politicians never mention. In the third quarter of 2025, Houston led the entire nation in foreclosure starts. 3,763 properties began the formal foreclosure process in just 3 months. That's more new foreclosures started than in Los Angeles, New York, or Chicago. Among major metropolitan areas with populations exceeding 1 million residents, Houston consistently ranks in the top 5 for overall foreclosure rates. 1 in every 2,195 housing units had an active foreclosure filing. What shattered the Houston promise? Energy sector volatility hit working families like a wrecking ball. When global oil prices swing, and they always swing, Houston's economy swings with devastating force. The layoffs don't just affect drilling companies. They ripple through the entire supply chain. Equipment manufacturers, transportation firms, the restaurants and stores that serve energy workers, the construction companies that build their homes. When those paychecks stop arriving, mortgage payments stop being made. It's that brutally simple. Houston also recorded the highest number of bank repossessions among major Texas metros in recent months. 109 homes seized and taken back by lenders in August 2025 alone. That's 109 families who lost everything they'd invested in their homes. 109 front doors that no longer belong to the people who painted them, the children who grew up behind them. The suburban neighborhoods that exploded during the pandemic boom are now drowning in inventory that nobody wants to buy. Builders kept constructing new homes even as demand cooled, flooding the market with supply. Now, homeowners who purchased at peak pandemic prices find themselves underwater, owing more than their properties are worth, watching their neighbors' homes sell at foreclosure auctions for fractions of the original value. The job losses compound the damage. Major energy companies announced layoffs throughout 2024 and 2025. Office towers in downtown Houston that once hummed with activity now have entire floors sitting vacant. The now hiring signs that once lined every highway exit have been replaced by for lease signs in strip mall windows. For anyone with significant money invested in Houston real estate, whether a primary home, rental property, or retirement portfolio, the warning signs are flashing red. The energy sector that built this city's wealth remains dangerously volatile. The pandemic migration that artificially inflated prices has reversed, and the foreclosure pipeline isn't slowing down, it's accelerating. Number 7 takes us to Chicago, Illinois. Chicago, the city of broad shoulders, the economic heart of the American Midwest, home to global corporations, world-class institutions, and a housing market that weathered decades of ups and downs. Surely a city this established, this economically diversified, would be insulated from foreclosure chaos. But behind the gleaming lakefront skyline, a foreclosure crisis is systematically gutting entire neighborhoods. And banks are scrambling to process the overwhelming backlog. Illinois posted the third worst foreclosure rate among all 50 states in October 2025. And Chicago isn't just contributing to that number, it's driving it. In the first half of 2025, Chicago ranked among the top 3 worst metropolitan areas in America for foreclosure activity. 0.26% of all housing units had a foreclosure filing. Among major metros with populations exceeding 1 million residents, Chicago consistently occupies the top 5 worst positions month after month. But here's what makes Chicago's crisis uniquely dangerous: the foreclosure timeline. Properties foreclosed in Illinois have been stuck in the legal process for an average of over 700 days. Some cases drag on for years. That means the homes being repossessed by banks today started the default process 2 years ago or more. The crisis you're witnessing right now is just the visible tip of a massive, submerged iceberg of distressed properties working through the system. Chicago also led the nation in bank repossessions among major metros. 159 homes officially taken back by lenders in August 2025 alone. That's not scattered incidents. That's entire blocks being systematically hollowed out. The South Side and West Side neighborhoods bear the deepest scars. Drive through communities like Englewood, Austin, or Garfield Park, and you'll witness what sustained foreclosure pressure does to a neighborhood. Vacant lots where family homes once stood, boarded windows spray-painted with warnings, real estate signs so weathered they've become part of the landscape, entire streets where more properties are abandoned than occupied. The population exodus compounds the damage. Chicago has lost residents every year for nearly a decade. Property taxes, already among the highest in the nation, keep climbing to cover budget shortfalls. The employers who once anchored middle-class neighborhoods have relocated to suburbs or other states entirely. For anyone holding property in Chicago, whether as a homeowner, landlord, or investor, the mathematics are unfavorable. Population continues declining. Property taxes continue rising. The economic fundamentals continue weakening. And the foreclosure wave that began accelerating during the pandemic shows no indication of cresting. Do you think these budget crises and foreclosure explosions are accidents? Or are they just the ones that finally got publicly exposed? Moving to number 6, Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland promised a comeback. For decades, civic leaders pointed to downtown revitalization projects, new professional sports venues, and expanding healthcare systems as undeniable proof that Ohio's second-largest city had turned the corner. The narrative was compelling, a Rust Belt survivor reinventing itself for the modern economy. But the foreclosure data tells a brutally different story that no amount of downtown development can mask. In the third quarter of 2025, Cleveland ranked 4th worst among all U.S. metropolitan areas, with populations exceeding 1 million residents. One foreclosure filing for every 593 housing units. This isn't a struggling neighborhood statistic or an isolated pocket of distress. That's the entire Cleveland metropolitan area, including suburbs that were supposed to be safe investments. Cleveland has functioned as a foreclosure hotspot for years, long before the current crisis. The city's legacy of industrial job loss, steel mills shuttered, auto plants relocated, manufacturing operations sent overseas, left entire neighborhoods economically devastated with no recovery path in sight. Median home prices in Cleveland remain among the lowest of any major American metro. But that's not a bargain you should celebrate. It's a warning sign screaming that something is fundamentally broken in the local economy. When manufacturing collapsed throughout the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s, it dragged property values down with it. Families who purchased homes near once thriving factories watched helplessly as their home equity evaporated. And when you find yourself owing more on your mortgage than your property will ever sell for, foreclosure stops being a worst-case scenario and becomes the only realistic escape route. Cleveland also ranks among the worst metropolitan areas in America for zombie foreclosures, properties abandoned by their owners, but not yet officially repossessed by banks. These vacant homes sit deteriorating for months or years, dragging down surrounding property values, attracting crime and vandalism, creating a downward spiral that traps entire blocks in perpetual decline. 3 of the 5 large metro areas nationally with the highest proportions of zombie foreclosures are in Ohio: Youngstown, Cleveland, and Toledo. This isn't coincidence. It's systemic regional economic failure. For investors who purchased Cleveland properties expecting an eventual turnaround and appreciation, the returns haven't materialized and likely never will. For homeowners trying to sell and relocate, there simply aren't buyers willing to pay prices that cover existing mortgages. The economic engine that once powered this city into greatness is gone, dismantled piece by piece over decades, and there's nothing emerging to replace it. Most people have absolutely no idea this is happening in cities they assume are safe. But the next city might change everything you thought you knew. It's far worse than you can imagine. Want the real truth about what's happening to the housing market? Subscribe now so you never get blindsided by the hidden financial dangers that headlines won't tell you about. Number 5 brings us to Las Vegas. Nevada, Las Vegas. Sin City, the entertainment capital of the world. The city that never sleeps and never stops building. Las Vegas survived the 2008 housing crash that left 1 in every 10 homes foreclosed, the worst metropolitan foreclosure rate in American history at that time. Surely it learned hard lessons from that catastrophe. It didn't learn anything. In July 2025, Nevada led the entire nation in foreclosure rates, 1 filing for every 2,326 housing units statewide. And Las Vegas, home to approximately 85% of Nevada's population, is the engine driving those devastating numbers. Among major metropolitan areas with populations exceeding 1 million residents, Las Vegas ranked 3rd worst in July. 1 in every 1,914 housing units was actively in foreclosure proceedings. Bank repossessions are surging month over month. Notices of default, the first formal step in the foreclosure process, are stacking up at county recorder offices across Clark County. What's fueling the crisis this time? The same fundamental weakness that caused the 2008 collapse: dangerous over-reliance on volatile tourism spending. When the national economy slows even slightly, discretionary spending on Las Vegas vacations is among the first expenses American families cut from their budgets. And when tourism dollars stop flowing, Las Vegas jobs disappear. Casino dealers, hotel housekeepers, restaurant servers, bartenders, convention workers, construction laborers. The entire economic foundation is built on sand that shifts with consumer confidence. A comprehensive UNLV study found that foreclosure notices cluster with disturbing concentration in specific neighborhoods: North Las Vegas, Paradise, Sunrise Manor, Kyle Canyon, and the Southwest Valley. These are working-class communities where families stretched every dollar to purchase homes during the pandemic boom, when prices seemed to only go up. Now, those same families are drowning. Inflation has absolutely crushed purchasing power for Las Vegas residents. One local homeowner told reporters she works 2 full-time jobs, brings home over $5,000 monthly, and still cannot make ends meet. When groceries, utilities, gas, and insurance consume everything, there's nothing remaining for the mortgage payment. For anyone who purchased Las Vegas real estate during the pandemic frenzy, when prices were surging and bidding wars were common, the mathematics have collapsed. Home prices haven't crashed dramatically, but carrying costs have exploded. Insurance premiums doubled, HOA fees increased, property taxes climbed. And when the total monthly obligation exceeds your ability to pay, the bank doesn't care about your personal circumstances or how hard you're working. Why is it always the fastest-growing cities that seem to crash the hardest when the music stops? Is it really coincidence? At number 4, Cape Coral, Florida. Cape Coral represented the Florida dream in its purest form. Affordable waterfront living, newly constructed homes with modern amenities, and endless Southwest Florida sunshine. Developers couldn't build quickly enough to satisfy demand. Buyers flooded in from expensive Northeast and Midwest markets, desperately searching for value and a better quality of life. Now those same buyers are watching their investments literally drown. In the 3rd quarter of 2025, Cape Coral-Fort Myers ranked third worst among all U.S. metropolitan areas for foreclosure activity. One foreclosure filing for every 589 housing units. That's nearly double the national average rate. For a region that was supposed to represent affordable American homeownership, the numbers tell a story of financial devastation. The problems accumulated with terrifying speed. Hurricane Ian made landfall in September 2022 as one of the most destructive storms in Florida history, devastating Cape Coral and surrounding Lee County. Homes were destroyed. Entire neighborhoods were flooded. Families were displaced for months. But the initial storm damage was only the beginning of the financial catastrophe. The aftermath proved far more destructive to homeowners' finances. Insurance claims were denied at alarming rates. Premiums tripled, and in many cases quadrupled, for homeowners who could get coverage at all. Multiple insurance carriers simply withdrew from the Florida market entirely, leaving homeowners scrambling to find any company willing to insure their properties. Some discovered they were completely uninsurable at any price. And here's the trap that catches families in an inescapable bind. When you cannot insure your home, you cannot obtain or maintain a mortgage. When you cannot get a mortgage, you cannot sell to a buyer who needs financing. And when you cannot sell your property, foreclosure becomes the only remaining exit from an impossible situation. Drive through Cape Coral today, nearly 3 years after Hurricane Ian, and you'll witness the aftermath that never made national headlines. Blue tarps still covering damaged roofs that owners cannot afford to repair. Bank-owned signs planted in front yards of once pristine retirement homes. Construction projects abandoned mid-build when developers ran out of capital. Entire cul-de-sacs with multiple foreclosed properties sitting vacant. The population boom that drove prices to unsustainable heights has decisively reversed. The investors who purchased multiple properties expecting reliable rental income have discovered there aren't enough qualified renters to fill them. And the insurance crisis that erupted with Hurricane Ian shows absolutely no signs of resolution. For retirees who invested their life savings, their entire retirement nest eggs, into Cape Coral real estate, believing the promise of affordable Florida paradise, the mathematics have completely collapsed. Home values are declining while insurance costs keep climbing. And when the next major hurricane inevitably strikes, the crisis will only intensify. Number 3 is Jacksonville, Florida. Jacksonville was marketed as the sensible Florida choice. Unlike Miami's overpriced luxury high-rises or Tampa's tourist-dependent economy, Jacksonville offered practical, working-class housing in a city with genuine economic diversity, affordable, growing, and supposedly safe from the insurance chaos devastating South Florida markets. That carefully constructed narrative has completely fallen apart. In October 2025, Jacksonville ranked among the worst major metropolitan areas in America for foreclosure activity. 1 in every 1,576 housing units facing some stage of default proceedings. Among cities with populations exceeding 1 million residents, Jacksonville consistently appears in the top 5 worst month after month. The problems undermining Jacksonville homeowners are structural and worsening. Job growth that politicians promised has slowed dramatically, while housing costs exploded beyond what local incomes can support. Families who purchased homes during the pandemic boom at peak prices now face mortgage payments that consume unsustainable portions of their monthly income. And unlike 2008, when underwater homeowners could refinance into lower rates, that escape route is sealed. Current interest rates are far too high to provide relief. Jacksonville's port and logistics sector was promoted as the foundation for steady, reliable employment that would support sustainable housing demand. But automation is steadily reducing headcounts at warehouses and distribution centers. Amazon fulfillment centers that fueled suburban expansion are cutting shifts and reducing workforces. When those jobs contract, the mortgage payments attached to workers' homes don't contract with them. The north side and west side neighborhoods of Jacksonville are being hit hardest by the foreclosure wave. These working-class areas witnessed massive residential development during the boom years. Cookie-cutter subdivisions marketed specifically to first-time buyers, eager to achieve home ownership. Developers promised these families they were buying into the American dream. Now those identical subdivisions have the highest default rates in the entire metropolitan area. For anyone who relocated to Jacksonville expecting the affordable stability that real estate agents and developers promised, the reality check has arrived with brutal force. The growth market narrative that justified stretching household budgets ignored fundamental economic realities. Local incomes haven't kept pace with home prices. Wage growth hasn't matched cost of living increases. And when that gap between earnings and obligations grows too wide, families inevitably fall through into foreclosure. Coming in at number 2, Columbia, South Carolina. South Carolina's capital city has been climbing national rankings throughout 2025, just not the rankings any homeowner wanted to see. Columbia now consistently ranks as one of the absolute worst foreclosure markets in the entire United States. In the third quarter of 2025, the metropolitan area posted one foreclosure filing for every 506 housing units, the second worst rate in the entire nation among metros, with at least 200,000 residents. But earlier in 2025, the situation was even more catastrophic. In the first quarter, Columbia held the single highest foreclosure rate in America, 1 in every 683 housing units actively entering the foreclosure process. What's driving Columbia's collapse when other state capitals remain relatively stable? South Carolina carries one of the lowest labor participation rates in the country. Just 57.2% of working-age adults are employed or actively seeking employment. That's the fourth worst rate among all 50 states, more than 5 percentage points below the national average. When significant portions of your population aren't working, they cannot make mortgage payments. It's devastating mathematics. The state's economy also lacks the diversification that protects larger metropolitan areas from sector-specific downturns. Government jobs anchor Columbia's economy: state offices, federal agencies, military installations. But government employment doesn't expand rapidly enough to absorb population growth. When families relocate to Columbia, expecting abundant opportunity, they discover limited options, stagnant wages, and rising costs. Walk through Richland and Lexington counties today, and you'll observe the pattern with disturbing clarity. Newer subdivisions built during optimistic years, now sprouting foreclosure signs. Homes that were lovingly maintained, showing signs of deferred maintenance as owners struggle to choose between repairs and mortgage payments. Real estate investors from out-of-state purchasing properties at auction for fractions of what previous owners paid. The state's relatively weak tenant protections and short foreclosure timelines mean distressed homeowners have limited time to find solutions. Properties move through the foreclosure process faster than in states with stronger consumer protections, accelerating the crisis. For homeowners trapped in Columbia's collapsing market, escape routes are rapidly closing. Selling means accepting substantial losses that may still leave mortgage balances unpaid. Refinancing is impossible at current interest rates. Waiting and hoping for market recovery could mean waiting years, time most struggling homeowners simply don't have before the bank takes action. And the number 1 worst foreclosure market in America is Lakeland, Florida. The worst foreclosure market in America isn't Miami with its luxury condos. It isn't Los Angeles with its million-dollar bungalows. It isn't Chicago with its decades of industrial decline. The worst foreclosure market in the entire United States is Lakeland, Florida. In the third quarter of 2025, Lakeland posted the highest foreclosure rate in the country, one filing for every 470 housing units. That's more than double the already elevated national average. In 2024, the numbers were even more shocking. 1 in every 172 homes received a foreclosure filing. Not 1 in 172 housing units struggling. 1 in 172 actively entering foreclosure. Lakeland was marketed as the answer to Florida's affordability crisis. Priced out of Tampa, just move 35 miles east to Lakeland. Can't afford Orlando. Lakeland sits right down I-4, close enough to commute. Developers constructed entire master-planned communities marketing attainable homeownership to families fleeing coastal prices. What those developers never disclosed was the financial trap waiting to spring shut. Insurance costs throughout Polk County have exploded beyond anything sustainable. Homeowners report property insurance premiums exceeding $6,000 annually, sometimes $7,000 or more, for modest single-family homes worth under $300,000. Property taxes continue climbing regardless of home values. HOA fees increase yearly. And the jobs that were supposed to follow population growth inland from Tampa, they never materialized at wages sufficient to support these crushing housing costs. Local real estate brokers and housing counselors confirm that insurance has become the single largest driver of foreclosures. When your annual premium doubles overnight, jumping from $3,000 to $6,000 with no warning, the household budget mathematics completely collapse. There's no expense to cut, no side job to take, no solution that bridges a gap that large. Short sales and foreclosure activity have doubled throughout Tampa Bay since January 2025. And Lakeland, positioned an hour east of Tampa with fewer economic resources, is getting devastated even more severely. The housing inventory is exploding as desperate owners try to sell before their banks initiate foreclosure proceedings. But buyers have evaporated. Anyone financially stable enough to purchase sees the insurance crisis and keeps searching elsewhere. That leaves sellers trapped, watching equity drain away month after month, while banks process paperwork. For the families who believed in the affordable Florida dream, who stretched their budgets, relocated their lives, invested their savings, the reality is financially devastating. They're trapped in homes they cannot afford to keep because the carrying costs exceed their income. They cannot sell because there are no buyers at any price that covers their mortgage. The equity they spent years building is evaporating monthly, and the banks are methodically working through their files, preparing the notices of default. Ever notice how the states that politicians celebrate for job growth and population booms are exactly the same states where working families cannot actually afford to buy or keep a house? Think carefully about what that pattern actually reveals. Not all cities are created equal, and some can systematically drain your savings, destroy your home equity, and leave you with nothing but debt and regret. If you want to protect your financial future and your family's security, you need to understand where the real danger is hiding before you make decisions you cannot reverse. Subscribe now, and I'll show you the markets to avoid, the warning signs to watch before they become crises, and the truth that mainstream headlines will never tell you, delivered every single week. Your home might be your largest asset. Don't let it become your next foreclosure statistic. Subscribe now, and if you're watching on TV, tap your remote so you never get blindsided again.